Hello, friends, and welcome to episode number. What number are we at now? 38. I almost lost my count there. 38 of Nostalgia Talk. I'm James, and before I get started, I would just like to make a few shout outs. Again, some birthday shout outs. First of all, I'd like to wish happy belated birthday to Noel McNeil. Many of you probably know of Noel best as the bear from Bear in the Big Blue House. He's done Sesame Street, Between the Lions, Eureka's Castle, a bunch of other puppet TV shows. So happy birthday to Noel, a very, very nice guy. And also a happy belated birthday to Patrick Bristow. Patrick has made multiple TV appearances. He's done Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, Friends, Ellen, Mad About You, Belle and the Bulldogs, Crash and Bernstein, so many other great TV shows. So happy birthday to Patrick. And speaking of actors who we all know best for appearing on screen, today on Nostalgia Talk, I am very, very happy to have with me one of my favorite actors ever. Please, let's give a big welcome to the one, the only, the legendary Austin Pendleton.
Thank you. Thanks, James. Thanks so
You're
much.
very welcome. It's great to have you here.
Happy to be here. Yeah.
Now, for anyone who doesn't know Austin, he has done film and stage work. He is best known as a playwright and theater actor, but in films, he's been in Short Circuit as Dr. Howard Marner. He was Gurgle the fish in Finding Nemo, John Gibbons, the stuttering lawyer in My Cousin Vinny. He was the umbrella salesman Marty in Christmas with the Cranks, and Doc Hopper's assistant Max, not Matt, Max in the Muppet Movie, and was in What's Up, Doc, The West Wing, a bunch of other stuff. So it's such a thrill to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks.
And now let's take this presentation into the lab, by which I mean, let's begin. So first of all, what inspired you to want to get into acting?
I grew up in a theatrically influenced household in that my mother had been a professional actress and director before she married my father. But they fell in love and she moved to Warren, Ohio, which I and my brother and sister are from then I was born a year and a half before we joined World War II. I'm the oldest of the three kids. And
Wow.
So after World War II, a couple of years after it in Warren, Ohio, some people came to Mom and said they wanted to start a community theater, in which she gave them advice and she helped them raise the money. We had fundraisers at our house, and we live in the country, and there was a big field, and that was the parking lot for the fundraiser.
Oh, wow.
And then she began to work there. And the first couple of productions were actually performed in our living room. And the first 2 or 3 shows, including those, were rehearsed in the living room. All this in the evenings. Like after dinner, after all 3 kids were supposed to be in bed, although Alec and I would sneak down and watch. And it was kind of magical watching these people. We'd rearrange the furniture in the living room so that it conformed to whatever the play required, you know. And it was treasurable. Plus, Oklahoma kept sending out tours every year. And we would drive up at night to Cleveland and see the new tour of Oklahoma. And I got I still can't hear the music to that show or see it without it whisking me back into that magic, you know. And
memories will do that to you.
Yeah. And I got obsessed seeing Oklahoma, wanting to be on a stage, you know. We would go at night and we would drive home from Cleveland back to Warren on this road that still serves between the 2 towns called Route 422. And we would pass farm field and the moon shining on the fields. And I would just think about being in Oklahoma. I don't know what restrained me from actually running up the stage and trying to audition for it, you know. So all those factors, but most particularly the community theater in Warren.
Okay. What was your first ever stage performance?
Well, it was either in a show at that community theater was called TNT, Trumbull New Theater. Trumbull County is where it was in Ohio. And TNT. My first was either in a show in TNT where I had a small part, and the director was this marvelous woman named Dorothy Gamoose. And Mom and Dad, who was a marvelous actor, he was a businessman. He had a small company in Warren. But he would act in some of the shows. He was wonderful, you know. But Mom, before going to rehearsal, would coach me. It was one of those old-fashioned plays that you make fun of, like the melodramas. And Act 2 was in a tavern, and this young guy comes in looking for his father, and you know, who's drunk and all that. Those kind of play. It's a parody of those kind of plays that flourished in the 19th century.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So we would be about to go to rehearsal, and Mom would say, "Now, okay, when you come in, where are you coming from?" And I said, "Backstage." "No, you're coming in from the street." "What's the temperature outside?" "Oh, I don't know. Well, I think this place says that it's cold. So you come in from the cold." I mean, it was that kind of first time I'd ever thought of questions like that, which are, after all, the cornerstone of acting. You know,
that is cool. Actually, that is a really good way to kind of get you in character. Wow.
Yeah, I remember I could hardly wait to get to rehearsals, just to act.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "I don't want Dorothy." My mom said, "I don't want Dorothy, the director, to be saddled with some kid who doesn't even know what he's doing. So you have to answer these questions."
Mm-hmm.
So then I would start thinking about that stuff. And that then when some years after that, when I came to New York after I graduated from college, and I started to study with Uta Hagen, who was a legendary acting teacher and a legendary actress, that kind of talk just continued in Uta Hagen's class, but in elaborate detail. She had all kinds of exercises about it and everything. Mm. And then when she would when Uta Hagen would assign you a scene, she expected to see the fruit of all those exercises in the work you did in the scene. She played the original leading woman in, the play Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
Yes, I do. I do know of that play.
Yeah. She was the first one to do it.
Oh, that's interesting.
On Broadway.
Cool.
And this was after I'd studied with her for a term. And she casually mentioned one day in class that I'm going to be in a play. And I thought, well, I got to see that. And so I went to a preview. And well, first of all, to come upon that play, which I didn't know anything about, it hadn't even opened. It was preview. And come upon that play, and then at the same time to see one's acting teacher act that brilliantly, all in the same night, made it maybe the most unforgettable night I ever had in terms of watching a play.
Incredible. Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And eventually you went into doing like on-camera roles in film and TV. Do you remember the first one you ever did?
The first film was an Otto Preminger film called Skidoo, which was the best thing that came out of that to me was I had from that point on a friendship till he died with Otto Preminger, who was one of the great film directors of the film itself. It was one of the last films he made, but he had made some brilliant films leading up to that. That movie, as we were making it, we all thought it would be a disaster. And indeed, when it first opened, it was received as a disaster. I mean, terrible reviews, people would walk out on it and so forth and so on. But almost immediately after that bad reception, it like instantly became a cult favorite. It opened in January of 1969. And when a studio, and it was a Paramount picture, when a major studio opens a movie in January, it's an admission that they don't think it's going to work. Or otherwise they would have opened it in the holiday season. But if it opens like 2 weeks after New Year's, it's the studio saying you can forget this one. and it got awful reviews and everything. But then, like almost immediately, people really into film began regarding it as a cult favorite, like immediately, which it remains to this day. That year of 1969, which began when it opened, every Friday night at midnight, it was screened on the Berkeley campus in California. Things like that. This film that had been a catastrophe when it opened, what had been pronounced a catastrophe, but then clearly it wasn't a catastrophe. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Wow.
Yeah.
One of my very favorite film roles that you've done, among the many that I listed in the introduction, is the original Muppet Movie, where you were assistant to Charles Durning's character, Doc Hopper. I'm a huge Muppet nut. I've interviewed so many Muppet people on this podcast. Can you talk a little bit about doing the Muppet Movie?
Oh, yeah. It was very stressful.
Really?
Yeah, you're asking me about the stressful ones. The director was very troubled all the way through it and agitated. And so it was a very tense set. And the best part about it to me was I had all those scenes with Charlie Durning, who I was in the musical of Fiddler on the Roof originally, and Charlie Durning had a small part in that when it was trying out in the out-of-town tryout. It was in first Detroit and then in Washington. And Charlie and I became very good friends during that time. And then halfway through the run in Detroit, they cut his role out. So he left the show. But then we continued to be friends when I got back to New York. Then he and I acted in several films together just by coincidence. And then before we acted in the Muppet Movie together. And then we acted in a couple of more films right after that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you guys had quite the relationship then.
Yeah, we were friends.
Yeah.
And then he did he won a Tony at one point for, I think, a revival of Cat on the Hot Tin Roof. And
yeah, I think I read that about him.
Yeah, and whenever I would go see a play of his, I'd go backstage, and if he were free, we would go out and have a drink and so on. So yeah, we kept up all through the rest of his life.
Despite the fact that Charles Durning's character in the Muppet Movie was such an evil thing that got worse and worse as the film went by.
Well, yeah, but
and your character was more like, all right, I'm just here for money.
Yeah. And I remember about the fondest memories I have of that shoot. Sometimes it would be all night shoots on the studio lot, and they would make shots of us driving past the camera in the middle of the night. So it looked like we were driving all night or something like that. And so each of those shots had to be set up and lit and everything. These nights would go by from midnight to like 5 a.m. And we would just talk about, Charlie and I would just sit in the car and talk about our personal lives. and I remember a few nights of that. And that's the thing I remember the most fondly from that movie. Yeah.
And of course, while you were doing that film, you got to be in a lot of scenes with one of my idols, Jim Henson. And
well, he wasn't in them, of course, but he was on the set all day, and he was doing some of the puppeteering, of course.
Yeah.
He was a marvelous man. He had this very spiritual quality about him, but also a practical quality about him that was so. And you felt very protected by him. Because like I say, it was a film set that had a lot of tension going on in it. But Jim Henson and also Frank Oz made you feel protected. And that was great. That was true. Great. Yeah.
That's really amazing. Another film role that's quite well known that you were in is Short Circuit. And I got to tell you, when I told the guys I work at a rental house for film equipment. I'm actually wearing our company hoodie right now. William F. Whites we're called.
What?
We're called William F. Whites. We're we're a rental service all around Canada.
Oh, wow. So you're in Canada right now?
Yep. I am on the East Coast in Nova Scotia.
Oh, my. I've been in Nova Scotia.
Oh, what for?
I shot a movie once in Nova Scotia.
Cool.
With Juliette Lewis. and Bill Hurt, I think, and a lot of wonderful actors. I can't quite remember. You can Google it. It was made in and Shelley Duvall, and again we had all night shoot. It was a thriller set in the village, in Greenwich Village, but it was in a series of murders were happening in a little apartment house, like a 3 or 4 story apartment house in Greenwich Village in Manhattan. So they built that apartment house inside an old armory.
That sounds like something that film people of Nova Scotia would do.
Well, it was an American company, but of course they were able to cut a real deal in Canada. Excuse me, it was a period where a lot of American movies were being shot in Canada. So we were just up, we were each in we were all in different rooms in a hotel in Halifax, is that it?
Yeah, I live in the suburbs of Halifax.
Yeah, so we would be driven then out to this armory was on the edge, right on the ocean. And often we would do all night shoots.
That's pretty cool.
It's not a bad movie at all. It's a thriller. I think it was made in about 1998 or 1999. It had something of a career on television, but it was shot in Nova Scotia. So we were there for weeks. And I loved Halifax, and I loved all that. And I love those actors,
Awesome. But yeah, when I told the guys at the rental house that I'm working at that I was going to be talking to you, like first thing I did was I showed them a picture of you in the Muppet movie, and I said, "Hey guys, does this actor look familiar? Because some of us are Muppet fans, some aren't." So my coworker Henry looked at the picture and he's like, "That guy was in Short Circuit," and I said, "Yes, and he's going to be coming to Nostalgia Talk," and he's like, "No way." Boy, was Henry ever excited to hear that I was going to be talking to you.
Well, send him my best. Yeah.
Hi, Henry, if you're listening, I'm going to send this to him. So.
Okay.
Yeah. He actually, I hadn't really watched much of Short Circuit before. I watched a little bit of it to get ready for this. Henry has been sending me clips all week.
Have you ever seen the whole movie?
Not yet. No.
It's a charming movie.
Okay.
It was directed by a guy I went to college with, John Badham.
Oh, is that how you got involved in it?
I think that's how I got hired. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, he knew me and he knew my work, so I didn't have to audition or anything. He hired me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have any other Short Circuit stories that you'd like to share? I'm sure a lot of Short Circuit fans that might be listening would love to hear them.
Well, I basically didn't have much of any scenes with the actual with the robot. So those I'm sure were very tricky to do. The scenes I were in, very straightforward acting scenes, Steve Guttenberg and Fisher Stevens and people like that. And those were just great scenes to shoot. Very alive, very crackling, and the first part of it we shot around Portland, Oregon. I've shot 2 movies in Portland, Oregon. I really love that town. I know it's been having some troubles lately, but I love that town. And then we moved down to a soundstage in Los Angeles.
Nice.
Yeah. It was just, I don't have anything, I don't have any particular anecdotes that I remember. I just remember it was a good time. And the scenes all were exciting to do with those guys.
I bet. Because from what I've seen of Short Circuit, it definitely looks like a really cool movie.
Yeah, it's got a lot of life in it. It's got a movie either has that or it doesn't. You know what I mean?
That's a great way to put it. Like I was just at the Atlantic Film Festival and there were some films that were really intriguing to watch. And there were some films that are like, oh my God, this is not a good movie. One of the best in my mind was one that starred a friend of mine, actually. She was playing a live stream gamer.
Wow. Mm-hmm. What's it called?
It's called Stream Me. I think it's on Amazon Prime. If you'd like, if you have Amazon Prime and would like to check it out, I highly recommend it. It's really good.
Great. What's her name?
Her name is Christine Digiosia.
Okay. I'll look out for it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Her. Yeah. We took an improv course last year, and we became good friends after that.
Yeah. That'll do it.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. So Another popular film that you were in is, of course, a musical, which is kind of like a stage musical. I mean, you're probably in a lot of stage musicals, but you had a pretty big role in the movie What's Up, Doc?
Yeah, that's not really a musical. A couple of
Oh,
times she sings, but there may be two songs in it that she sings. But basically, it's a farce. Yeah,
okay.
it's a
What was
farce comedy.
what was that project like?
I love that project. Peter Bogdanovich directed it. It was his second big film. His first one that came out while we were shooting What's Up, Doc, which was called The Last Picture Show, which was having a triumph. It was winning awards. It was, everybody was swept away by it. And What's Up, Doc was a black and white movie made in the 1970s, which is unheard of, with with Barbara Streisand and great Kenneth Mars. Oh my God, who was inspired. There was and Madeline Kahn.
Yeah, I was just about to ask about Madeline Kahn because I've seen her in a lot of stuff. She's very funny. She has a very lovely voice. So I was wondering if you had any like memories about her that you wanted to share.
She was good. She was very shy. She was lovely. She was very it was the first time she'd ever been in a movie. And
Oh,
Barbara,
really?
yeah, and Barbara, a couple of times I saw Barbara would actually help her with that and be of a great help to her in that. And I remember that. She was very nice, Madeline. She was very soft-spoken and very shy, wonderful to act with.
I bet.
Yeah, as was Barbara. If you couldn't act with those people, as a friend of mine used to say, if you can't act with that person, you should seek vocational guidance. The actor called Roscoe Lee Brown, he would say that. If you can't act with her or with him, you should seek vocational guidance. And those two women were examples of that.
Mm, cool. One of my very favorite films that you've ever been in that's not Muppets or musical based at all. It's actually one that my dad and I like. My dad and I really like it a lot. My Cousin Vinny.
Oh,
And and I remember watching that for the first time. I think I had just finished eating dinner. My dad and I had just come home from something, so I had dinner. And TV's on, and my dad's like, "My Cousin Vinny's on." I was like, "I've heard of that film. What the hell is it?" And he said it's Joe Pesci, and I knew Joe Pesci best from Home Alone, where he
oh,
was a robber. And then
yeah.
he says to me, "Joe Pesci's playing a lawyer," and I'm like, "No way."
And he
There's
had just won the Oscar when we made that movie for a gangster, a brilliant, I think a Martin Scorsese, real like a gangster movie.
ah
He had just won the Oscar for it when we shot
good
my.
for him.
Oh yeah, well he's a great actor. Did you see him like a year and a half ago in that other Scorsese film that came out a year and a half or whatever called The Irishman?
I didn't know. I've never even heard of it.
Drop everything. It's the three leads are Robert De Niro and Al Pacino and Joe Pesci.
Oh, I'm definitely making a note to look that up because I'm a big fan of all those guys.
Yeah, and the director is Martin Scorsese, who is pretty brilliant.
Hmm.
And it's a great script, and everybody in it is good. Everybody in it. It's like a 3-hour movie. You feel when it's over like you watched it for an hour and 10 minutes or something.
Yeah, I
Joe
felt
Pesci, he just made it a couple years ago, and he's still in total form,
hmm,
as
yeah,
are Al and De Niro.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when you did My Cousin Vinny, of course, you were playing a lawyer.
Yeah.
And so for that film, did you actually have to do research on law for it? Or was it just like, okay,
It all
here's what
kind
you
of
have to do?
explains itself.
Okay.
Yeah. And it no, I didn't. And there are sometimes I played a lawyer where you did have to research the subtleties of the legal aspect. I can't remember what those were, maybe on television once or twice. But no, not for that one. I
Okay.
got in that one because it was director, some guy named Jonathan Lynn, who's a good friend of mine.
Oh, nice.
I know Jonathan Lynn that once in the late 1960s. I was over in London. I was all by myself. I was waiting for a close friend of mine coming over from Ohio, from Warren, and we were going to meet and hang out around London. But he hadn't come yet, so I was just kind of wandering around. And then we were going to go down to meet my sister, who was in Florence, Italy.
Oh,
and then
nice.
we were going to hang out with her, and then, and then, but anyway, so I was in London all by myself, and on a Wednesday afternoon, I was passing the theater where they were playing Fiddler on the Roof, which I had been in on Broadway for a year, which ended about 2 years before what I'm telling you. And I was feeling kind of alone because my friend hadn't come yet. And so I thought, you know what, whoever's playing the part I played in Fiddler on the Roof, I'm going to go back to, because the matinee was just about to be over. So I'm going to go backstage and ask for that guy and introduce myself, just to have, maybe we can go for a cup of coffee or something, I thought. So I looked at the pictures. The show was just about over. The matinee was almost done playing.
Right.
So I looked at the picture, and there was the guy playing my part. I saw the picture and I saw his name, Jonathan Lynn. So I went around backstage 5 minutes after that, because then the show was letting out. And I said, I'd like to see Mr. Lynn. And they said, oh, he's right upstairs. And so I started to go upstairs, and he was coming downstairs. Of course, I recognized him from the picture. And I said, Jonathan, I'm Austin. He says, Austin Pendleton, who played this part in New York. And I said, yeah. He said, you must come back to my flat and have tea with me and my wife.
Aww.
So I went back and had tea with him and his wife, whose name is Rita, and who is magnificent. And so we had tea, and then they said, of course, you'll see the show tonight. And I thought, well, I didn't come to London to see Fiddler on the Roof. I've been in it for a year, But I mean, so I went, and he got me standing room, and I saw, and he, of course, was excellent. And the whole production, it was a reproduction of the Jerome Robbins production, but with a cast for the London stage, and it was beautiful, just like the original Jerome Robbins production was a beautiful production. And so then he drove me back to their apartment, their flat, as they call it in London. And we sat up, this was an August night. We sat up till the sun came up.
Wow.
Literally talking about 6 a.m. And then they drove me back to the bed and breakfast I was staying in. And then we saw each other a lot for the room. And then my friend arrived, and I introduced them all, and we all went, somebody's house on Sunday afternoon to a brunch. So ever since then, Jonathan and Rita and I have been friends. And sometimes they would come to New York, we'd be friends, or I'd be in London. But then they moved to New York. And because he began to direct films in Hollywood, I'm in 4 of the movies he made. The first of which was My Cousin Vinny. The others were Sergeant Pilko, and one, I forget the name of it, with an interesting movie with Michael J. Fox.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, which is really it's sort of an unusual comedy. I forget the name of it. You could look up Jonathan Lynn film, the one with Michael J. Fox. And then the last one I was in, which I think is my favorite of the 4, was one called Trial and Error, where I played a judge. And that was filmed in Los Angeles. And I think all of them were filmed in Los Angeles. And I really enjoyed that one. I love that movie, and I enjoyed the making of it the most. Yeah.
Cool. Jonathan Lynn's reaction to you almost sounds very similar to my reaction to when our mutual friend Phil Proctor mentioned your name when I had him on the podcast.
Oh yeah, Phil. Well, Phil and I, yes, I'm sure he did. We go way back to college.
Yeah, he was talking a little bit about that, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I worked with this actor named Austin Pendleton." I'm like, "Oh my God, Austin Pendleton's one of my favorite actors," and he's like, "Really? Well, do you want me to get you a text?" So Phil, thank you very much. If you're listening, thank you very much for
Phil
that.
is Phil is still, he has the exact same energy that he had then.
Yes,
And it's totally fresh and it's totally new and it's totally encompassing of everything that's going on today. He's amazing. And his wife Melinda, and the same thing. And I saw them just recently in New York.
Oh, wow.
And, every time they come to New York, we get together. I wrote the scripts for 2 musicals at Yale when we were undergraduate. He played one of the leads in each of them.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you and Phil, I should also mention that you and Phil were also in Finding Nemo. He was the horse, and of course,
well, when you make an animated film, you don't ever see any of the other actors.
Yeah, that's
true. You just go into a little room and they show you the film and they tell you what to say, and it has to go with what the fish or whatever is doing.
Yeah, with the mouth movement. Yeah.
Yeah. Although if they like a thing you do that doesn't quite fit what the mouth movements are, they change the mouth movements. But I mean, Finding Nemo was all in one day in a little tiny studio in Berkeley. I flew out that morning from New York, and of course you gain time. And I spent all the late morning and afternoon into the evening, and I had no voice left because it's talking like that all afternoon.
Yeah, just a very excited like character. Like, where are you from? The ocean. Ah, the ocean. Ah, the ocean.
Yeah, well, you do 27 takes of that.
Oh my God.
It's not like playing a scene. It's like line by line. When you play a scene in a movie or a play or television show or whatever, you're sort of breathing in the other person's lines and then you exhale your own line, as somebody put it to me once.
That's a great way to put it.
A great teacher called Mark Zeller said that to me once. And himself a good actor. And so, but you can't do that on it because the other people aren't in the room with you. So you're saying your own lines. So after 6 or 7 or 8 hours of this, then the animators and the spouses and them themselves, all of them remarkable people. No, particularly the main couple, I think, took me to a dinner at a French restaurant in Berkeley. We were in a Pixar studio in Oakland. All this in the Bay Area, you know.
Right.
So we drove from Oakland to Berkeley, which is 10 minutes, you know, and we went to this wonderful French restaurant. So again, sometimes the happiest things I remember are the auxiliary things, like that dinner, and we've been friends ever since. Whenever they come to New York and so forth, and like the midnight kind of driving around in the car with Charlie Durning, talking about our personal lives. Well,
it goes to show how close you guys were.
Yeah. But as I say, in certain films, it's those auxiliary things that you remember the most fondly.
Right.
Yeah.
Was that character in Finding Nemo because you also did Gurgle in Finding Dory at the very end?
You know, I never did a day's work on Finding Dory. They just simply grabbed a couple of my lines from Finding Nemo. Oh. So yeah. So and I got paid more for Finding Dory than any movie I've ever done, and I didn't do a day's work. I was paid that because they used my voice and they used like 5 lines or something. And I had maybe 8 lines in Finding Nemo.
Yeah. I remember asking Andrew Stanton, who, of course, for any of the listeners who don't know, is the director of both Finding Nemo and Finding Dory. I once asked him.
Finding Nemo, I think, is one of the great films.
Oh, yeah. Like it's one of the, like in terms of animated films.
Well, animated or not, I think it's one of the great films.
Oh, yeah. Like
I think the storytelling in that movie is staggering.
Absolutely.
That moment of the disappearance of Nemo's whole family.
Oh, yeah.
Very few moments in film are that powerful. And so
even as a 4-year-old, I was 4 when that movie came out, but even as a 4-year-old, I still felt something.
Oh, yeah, I would think you would at 4 because you'd feel the helplessness of Nemo, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Is he called? Yeah, he's called Nemo, right? Whatever. But it's like, that is a profound movie.
Yeah, it really is. I remember asking Andrew just before Finding Dory came out. I asked him, "Are we going to see the Tank Gang in it?" And he said, "Maybe if you're really patient."
Yeah,
And I remember going to the theater, and there was an interview with Andrew and I think the producer Lindsay Collins. And Lindsay looks and Lindsay says to the interviewer, "Here's a little tip: stay for the credits." So I thought this is either a nod on what Andrew said on me or a hint of another one.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
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 So was that your only animation role?
As far as I can remember, yeah, I might have done another one ages ago that I've forgotten about.
Okay.
But it's very strenuous. It's very, the work as you do it is not rewarding. It's
Right.
very hard and technical. Now, happily, I had really sympathetic people around me, like the people you just mentioned. And they were there, and it's fairly small room, so that makes it a lot easier. And very patient people. So they weren't, the room was not filled with, is he ever going to get this line right or anything like that, you know? It was, they were very careful and supportive. So that was all nice. And the dinner, as I say, afterward was wonderful.
Yeah, that would probably be the best part of it.
Yeah. But the usual pleasure you get in working on a movie, acting in a movie, or in a play or television, is the interaction with the other actors. And of course, that's not possible to get that in making an animated film. Yeah.
Speaking,
I would have given anything to have been in a room with Ellen DeGeneres. You know,
I was wondering that if you got to meet people like
I've
Ellen
never
DeGeneres.
met her, and I'm in awe of her talent.
Did you ever get to meet Willem Dafoe?
Yeah, I was in a movie with him that,
because he was in Finding Nemo also.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people I knew were in Finding Nemo, but we never crossed paths.
Fair.
I was in a film with Willem Dafoe, which we were shooting down in Florida, and then we shot for a couple of weeks, and then I was free to go up to New York for 2 weeks and then come back. So one day during those 2 weeks between when I did my first time and when I was going to go back for the rest of it, I went to one of the big agencies, the Morris, I think the William Morris agency, I'm not a client of theirs, but I went there to audition for something in one of their rooms, you know. So I was walking along, some guy who I kind of knew called out to me from the office. He said, "Hey," and I said, "Hey." I was walking down the hall. He was behind his desk in a room. I said, "Hi." He said, "Hey, so your movie's been canceled." That's how I heard about it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yikes.
And
oh man, that sucks.
Yeah, and it was a great script. And in fact, I felt so sad because the day of the first read-through down in Florida, I was hanging out before the first read-through around the table where we all read the script. And the two authors of the screenplay were saying to me, "This is such a great moment for us. We've waited 5 or 6 or 7 years, whatever it was, to get this movie made. And now we have this great cast, and now this is just so exciting." So, of course, they were the first people I thought of when I heard this news. So, of course, I never went back to Florida. But that was the film with Dafoe, who, of course, is an extraordinary actor. And the whole cast was full of really good people. I kind of miss what that whole experience would have been. But they just pulled the plug on it. I still to this day do not know why. I'm only thinking about it right now because you brought up Willem's name. But I hadn't thought of it in years, actually, because I blocked it out because it was going to be a really great shoot.
Yeah.
But you could feel, even in the 2 weeks that we started with, the day by day, the director was a very nice guy, gifted, I forget his name. But there's a thing on a film set when people who are not the actors, but people importantly, very importantly associated with film, start to have troubled looks on their faces. Now, sometimes that happens in a film that's going fantastically, but usually it's you get, but you put it in the back of your head. You think whatever, I mean, we're going to shoot this film, and then if there's something wrong with it, they can make adjustments. And of course, as I say, it's a wonderful script and good cast. And but I remember those faces, just a couple, or maybe in the elevator at night in the hotel after an all-night shoot. But we'd say, well, it's an all-night shoot. Of course, they look, And I didn't think anything of it, but then that's one of the first things I started to think about when I got that news quite accidentally at the William Morris Agency. All that came crashing down. And I thought, are they going to stop and now put it all together again? Maybe change the script and change the cast if they need to, if they rewrite the script or whatever. I said, no, it just seems to be over. I've not only not ever been in a film where that happened, I don't know that I've ever heard of a film where it got that far into the shoot. And then boom.
Finished all of a sudden, basically.
Yeah.
Wow.
All that years of preparation and everything. And the assembling of that cast, there were some marvelous actors in that.
Mm.
And including Willem Dafoe and the of course, and the it's, and now that you bring it up, it's kind of haunting again. You know what I mean?
Sorry.
No. It's helpful to think about things like that, because sometimes you take for granted how really fragile this business is.
Yeah, the only reason I was asking about Willem Dafoe is because a couple of years ago when I went to the Atlantic Film Festival, he was there. And
he's quite something.
Yeah, he did a film west of where I am in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, and it was premiering at the film festival, and he went to the screening. I didn't, unfortunately, get to meet him, but I got to watch him talk, which was really cool. I'm like, I'm in a room with one of my favorite actors.
Yeah, exactly. He's got that presence, and he's got that emotional base, and he's got that intelligence, that kind of unique intelligence,
He definitely seemed intelligent when I saw him talk. I was
totally.
Wow. Yeah. Although sadly I never got to meet him. So unfortunately by now, Willem Dafoe has long forgotten who I am.
You never know, James. You never know.
Well, Willem, if you're listening, leave a comment.
Right.
So speaking of really great actors, you were in a film that my family really likes and that a lot of people my age really likes. And I got to tell you, when some of my friends outside of work heard that I was going to be chatting with you, I mentioned this film, and boy, were they excited. You were in the all-star holiday film Christmas with the Cranks, which is such a funny film.
Yeah, I've never seen that movie. I often don't see them.
Yeah, a lot of voice actors and Muppet people and actors I've talked to have always said, I hardly ever watch what it is I've done.
Yeah. I'd always would rather not.
No, that's perfectly reasonable.
Yeah, but it certainly was fun to be there. There was no problem at all in that movie.
And you got to work with the great cast of people like Tim Allen, Jamie Lee Curtis.
Totally.
Yeah. And what's his name? Emmett Walsh, I think.
Yeah. Everywhere you turned, there was a wonderful actor.
Yeah. Dan Aykroyd. I love Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah. And the movie is such a rambling, funny, charming, insane thing, that movie.
Yeah. The first time
the very title,
Yeah. First time I ever saw it, I think I was at my grandparents' place. I think that's where I was, and it was on the TV. And I said to my grandparents, "You mind if I watch TV because I'm bored?" And they said, "Yeah, go ahead." So I put on Christmas with the Cranks, and I see all of the names show up on screen. I had read online that you were in it, and then I hear your voice saying, "I really think you could use an umbrella," and I'm like, "That's him. That's Austin Pendleton right there."
To get back for a minute to What's Up, Doc?
Yeah, sure.
That was a great shoot, and it's very exciting. I think it's a classic movie. And that kind of comedy is the hardest thing in the world to do. So the set was very tense. There was no tension between people.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it would bond us all together. And in between shots, we would just sit and talk intensely to each other. And when you had close-ups like a little scene opposite Barbara Streisand, she was so engaged. And so, as I said, if you can't act with her, you should seek vocational guidance. She gives you some. So there was a lot of that great stuff going on. And these talks we had, we would sit around while they were setting up the lights for the next scene and talk about, it was the early 70s, and all these treatments were now in vogue then, these patterns to go for group treatments and stuff like that. And we would debate them and tell about our lives. So we were brought together, well, primarily just because they were the kind of people they were, but also that kind of comedy, you have to talk so fast.
I bet.
And you have these long scenes, and all anybody's thinking, like at the dinner table or something, all anybody's thinking is, you're going to, don't let me be the one who screws it up, please, please, please. Because you have to talk so fast and pick up your cues so fast, but not overlap. It's like, really, I remember I was staying at a hotel in Los Angeles, and I would drive home and to the hotel. A couple of nights I would open the door to the room and literally crawl to the bed and fall asleep like at 8:30 or something and sleep all night.
You were that exhausted, huh?
Yeah, and that helped to create this great group feeling in the cast. We were all in the same boat.
Mm-hmm.
And with a person like Barbara Streisand, there was no hierarchy of who were the stars and who were, and who were the others. We were all one unit. And Ryan O'Neal, and Madeline and Kenneth Mars again. Oh my God. And so that film was very special. And then you see it, and it's so beautifully directed by Peter Bogdanovich. It all looks effortless. It looks like, boom, what fun. It wasn't fun. It was very exciting in that it was so challenging. It was nerve-wracking, that kind of comedy. It was patterned after comedies they made in Hollywood in the 30s, where they talk very fast, by that director, Howard Hawks, where they just talk fast. And some of those are classic old movies, with Cary Grant and people like that, and then Rosalind Russell and so forth, and Katharine Hepburn, and where everybody talks at a mile a minute. This was a deliberate homage to that earlier time. And boy, I think it's the most demanding movie in acting terms that I've ever been in.
Wow.
Although it looks like this little comedy,
Yeah, because I remember in one of my film classes, we were watching Singing in the Rain, and I'm just gonna add Singing in the Rain. I remember watching it, and I was like, "Holy crap, this is cool!" Like I couldn't even get out of my seat. I was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" And I texted my father, who was away. I was like, "Dad, I just watched Singing in the Rain," and he said, "What did you think?" And I was like, "That was the most amazing movie I've ever seen in my whole life."
It's breathtaking.
Yeah. And when I see all of the dancing, like I forget the guy's name, but when he was doing like a backflip by putting his feet on the wall and then flipping around, I was like,
Gene Kelly. Yeah.
No, it wasn't him. It was the other guy.
Donald O'Connor.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't know how I missed that. I know Gene Kelly's name, but I couldn't remember that other guy's name. But when I saw that, I was like, they must have rehearsed that for a long time.
Oh, I was never on the set of one of those movies, but they would do 100 takes of these things. Yeah.
I would assume something like that took 1,000 takes.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
But with Christmas with the Cranks, with what I was saying about looking at the screen and seeing your name and being like, oh, cool, I'm a big fan of Austin Pendleton. That was me when my father introduced me to My Cousin Vinny, because I'm just looking at all the cast names, Joe Pesci, Marissa Tomei. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I do like Marissa Tomei. Fred Gwynn, yes. And my father says to me, oh yeah, he was in The Munsters. And honestly, Fred Gwynn was friggin' hilarious in My Cousin Vinny.
Totally, yeah.
I think
that judge at the end, I forget the actor's name, but he was breathtaking.
Yeah.
Judge, when we're all hauled before the judge, and he's going, but what is going on here?
Yeah.
That judge is sublime.
I feel like it's the most accurate film about law ever.
Oh, maybe I was thinking about What's Up, Doc, when I said that judge. Yeah. No, it is. I'm told it's taught in law schools.
Okay, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to see somebody try to teach the Jim Carrey movie Liar Liar in a law school where he was playing a lawyer.
Yeah, but apparently My Cousin Vinny, you can really teach it very specifically.
Oh yeah.
On that script,
Yeah. So to wrap it up, a couple of people have sent me some fan questions for you.
Okay.
So the first one comes from one of my really good friends that I grew up with named Michaela Thomas, and it's a question about Christmas with the Cranks.
Okay.
And she wants to know, is Jamie Lee Curtis as cool as she thinks she is? Michaela, that depends on how cool you think Jamie Lee Curtis is.
Well, she's totally cool. She's relaxed. She's a colleague when you're working with her.
Yeah.
She's puts you at ease. She's fun. You look forward to doing a scene with her. Yeah.
You were in a few scenes with her. Especially like the supermarket scene where she's looking for the hickory honey ham. And and you just randomly go up to her and say, oh, Merry Christmas, Nora. And she's like, oh, well, thank you. Thank you, person. We're putting together a little homecoming for my daughter. And your response was, oh yeah, your daughter Blair. And she's like, how do you know that? I thought that was just the most clever way.
All about that until you're telling me now. Yeah.
We watch it every Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah. As I say, I've never seen it.
So final question here comes from my coworker, Henry Townsend. He's the fan of Short Circuit.
Yeah.
And he wants to know, as a Short Circuit fan, where's Crosby stat?
I have no idea. He may have been disassembled even. I don't know. I mean, I simply don't know. Or he may be somewhere in some kind of little museum or something, but I have no idea. Well,
Henry, sorry for the crappy answer, but there you go. That's where Crosby is.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, Austin, it's been great chatting with you. Finally getting to meet one of my favorite actors. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, just I really enjoyed this. Okay.
Well, thank you very much for joining me tonight. And to all you listeners out there, I will see you on the next Nostalgia Talk. Peace.
Peace.